Jealousies, enigmas, building up the people, tearing down stigmas, clothed with a purpose. When life tries to read the word, but I still go to therapy. No matter your past or what you've been through, this is a space non-judgmental. We got some things to get into. I got my mind in on my mental. No matter your past or what you've been through, judgmental. We got some things to get into. I got my mind in on my mental. Mind in 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 my mental health.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tenitria Williams. I'm your host and facilitator for today and every Thursday when we are having Minding My Mental Health. Thank you so much for joining. I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you for everyone who comes every week, who watches the replay or is able to catch us live. I understand that a lot of people are working, but again, I appreciate your support. I don't take that for granted. If you are watching, I would love for you to hashtag live. Let me know where you are watching from. So hashtag live and the city or state that you're watching from. Also, please do me a favor, share this video, tag your friends, tag your family. All of those things help with the analytics, but it also gets the word out that this is an important topic. So many people, I believe, can benefit from us doing these Minding My Mental Health, learning, growing. The purpose of this initially was to really tear down the stigma of mental health. But as we've said in some other broadcasts, I think the stigma itself has started to lessen, but we do still want to bring a lot of awareness about how to take care of our mental health. We want to bring a lot of awareness about things that are affecting our mental health in our world. And so again, if you will hashtag live, let me know where you're watching from, share the video, do all of those things that will help spread the analytics. I'm actually going to tag a few friends myself, and we are going to get started. I appreciate everybody who is here. So today's topic, we're talking about domestic violence awareness. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Many people don't know that, but every October we try to at least discuss this topic at least once in our broadcast. We're actually going to cover it twice this month. Last week, if you were here, you watched us. I interviewed Miss Tori, and she was a domestic violence advocate at a shelter recently. Their shelter actually had not received funding from the federal government that it always received. And so they were having to not shut down the shelter. It was still going to be open, but they had to let go of a lot of employees. And so it was affecting a lot of people. And that was across the state of Arkansas. I think we said 25 out of 31 shelters were not getting the funding that they were accustomed to getting. And so a lot of those shelters would either have to close or they would be operating from a very limited resource stash, or they would have very little staff to cover all of those things. And one of the things that she told us, one of the best ways that we could help to deal with that is to call the local shelters and see what they need, how you can help. You may not be able to volunteer without specific training or clearing, but there are things that you could do to help. So again, we appreciated her so much for joining us. If you did not catch that video, you can catch that video on YouTube at my page. In fact, if you have not followed me on YouTube and subscribed, please subscribe to my page at YouTube. It is just my name. at Tenitria. You can find me pretty easily. Thankfully, my mom spelled it unique enough that there's not a lot of Tenitria spelled the way that I spell my name. So again, we're just going to get rolling and get started on some of this information because I do think it's important, right? And so today's topic is looking at unmasking the tactics that many domestic violence abusers use in order to maintain their power and control in relationships. If you've ever asked yourself the question, why don't they just leave? I think today will lead us to some important insight as to why people don't just go, up, he hit me, I'm out, right? We're going to be able to get a clearer understanding and insight as to what's actually going on, which may keep people in that cycle or in that place longer than they even want to be themselves, right? And so let's look. I'm going to start with a couple statistics because I don't know if people are really aware that this is still a big problem. You know, we don't always hear about it as often, but domestic violence is still an issue that has to be addressed. It's still going on. The mindsets that allow for domestic violence, a lot of those mindsets are still very prevalent in our society. So let's just talk about a little bit. I'm going to throw out some statistics as to some things that people need to pay attention to when we're talking about this stuff. Okay, so over 1 in 3. Okay, so if you count you and 2 homegirls, 1 in 3 of women and 1 in 4 men in the U.S. have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. That is really high numbers. 1 in 3 has experienced rape, physical violence, or sexual assault in some way. That's again, those numbers are high. Nearly 15% of women and 4% of men have been injured because of interpartner violence, which could be rape, physical violence, or stalking at some point. These are all things coming from the hotline. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men ages 18 plus have experienced severe physical violence by their partner in their lifetime. And so think about that. We're talking severe violence versus what they would not categorize as severe. So there still may be violence or aggression in the relationship, but it may not be categorized as severe. Okay. According to the CDC, over 16 million women and 53 million men have experienced psychological aggression by their intimate partner in their lifetime. So even though it may not develop into physical violence, psychological abuse is also very, very prevalent. And that's with men and with women. The U.S. sees 10 million men and women combined become victims of domestic violence in each year. Put that in the comments. 10 million is a lot. 10 million each year. On a typical day, a domestic violence hotline in the U.S. can receive over almost 21,000 calls. 21,000 calls a day. Do you realize that this is an issue that we cannot just ignore or pretend that it's not happening? Okay. So like I said, last week we discussed that many of the shelters have lost funding already. Last week we were saying losing, but as of today, they have already, the federal government has said you're not getting any more funding. And so a lot of these shelters are having to decrease their staff. They're not able to operate to the capacity in which they were operating. And so that's going to affect a lot of people. That was in the state of Arkansas. So that's one state. But I can tell you this, if it's happening in Arkansas, we are not the only state that that's happening in. That is happening across the U.S. most likely, right? And so again, I think that's really important. I see people joining. If you'll do me a favor, hashtag live, let me know where you're watching from, and share this video. Tag someone that would benefit, or just share it to your page, share it to your story, and tag people, because we need to get people aware of what's going on. But not just aware. Today, we're going to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of what are some of these tactics that abusers are using to keep people in those relationships so that they can maintain their power and their control. So today's, I guess, broadcast is really to help us understand the framework of the tactics that are being used. That is, I was introduced to the concept of the power and control wheel. I think I was getting a postmaster's degree or certificate in marriage and family, and I had to take a domestic violence course. And in that, I was made aware of the power and control wheel, and that brought so much light and insight for me. Because I was beginning, oh, this makes so much sense, right? So we're going to explore these behaviors and the impact they have on relationships, safety, and self-worth. Okay, so the Power and Control Wheel was developed by the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project in Duluth, Minnesota. It was based on interviews that they took from survivors. And basically, after interviewing so many people, they started to see these patterns. And they were able to say, wait a minute, there are some common tactics that abusers use to establish their dominance, to establish that it is unlikely or less likely that the person that is their victim will leave them. They're not always like calculated the way we think, but a lot of times it actually is very calculated. Either way, these are tactics that you need to be aware of. You need to be able to see. So number one, you don't fall victim, but also if you see someone else and you're seeing these things in their relationship, maybe bringing some light or some insight as to what you've learned today. So this will helps us to see that abuse is not as isolated, right? As people may think. It's actually patterns of behavior that lead to that type of abuse. Okay. So at the center of the wheel is the motive. What is the motive of abusive relationship? It's power, to maintain the power and control. Every part of this wheel represents a strategy to achieve that control. When you hear the word control, what behaviors come to mind? Control. What you'll put in the comments when you hear the word control, what behaviors come to mind? For some people, it's manipulation, like, oh, they're controlling, they're manipulative. For other people, it's power, right? To be able to control things is a sense of power or aggression. But it's not always very aggressive. And sometimes control, the manipulation part is more subtle than we recognize. And you can just get lulled into being in that situation, right? So one of the things that you see on the Power and Control wheel, I tried to bring a illustration, but I couldn't get it to show on the screen for some reason. And I know there is a way to do it, but I couldn't figure it out today. But I would encourage you to Google Power and Control wheel to get an idea of what I'm talking about. But these are the different components that make up the Power and Control wheel, what we're going to talk about today. So the first one is using intimidation. Using intimidation. What is that? Intimidation may be something as simple as a look, like especially if you're a smaller person, like my height is 5 feet, right? I'm short. I'm a little person, not a little person, but I'm short, right? And so if someone is a lot bigger than me, they may try to use their size to intimidate me. And so using looks, using physicality as intimidation, making threatening gestures, making threatening actions. Now, I want to tell you, sometimes intimidation is not necessarily directed towards the victim, right? If I'm intimidating you, I may show you what I'll do but I use someone else. I'll do something to someone else who tried to cross me. And then I just let you know that I don't have a problem doing that with anyone who tries to cross me or leave me or betray me or whatever, right? And so it really is, it can be very, very manipulative. It could also be something more dramatic, smashing things, destroying property. What is that? That's showing my actual physical anger, aggression, my rage, displaying weapons. So fear can keep people compliant without physical violence. So if I can intimidate you, I may not actually have to touch you. I just have you thinking, hey, don't mess with this person because they can get very violent. Now, oftentimes that intimidation can escalate right into physical violence, but to gain that power, because remember, the goal is power and control. To gain that, I can simply use intimidation. People do that all the time. You even see that with politics. You see that with all types of things. Oh, this thing happened when they spoke out. So what are they doing to that person? They're using that person as an example to intimidate other people who would think about speaking out, right? And so it's really important that we can recognize this. So number one is intimidation. That is one of the tools that abusers will use to keep that dominance and that source of, or that sense of power. The next thing they'll do is they'll use emotional abuse, right? Emotional abuse. What is emotional abuse? Exactly what it sounds like, abusing them emotionally. So name calling, putting them down, destroying their self-esteem. Nobody wants you. You look like this, and you're stupid. All these things. Why? Because they're trying to use the psychological or emotional base to keep that person so beat down that they don't feel like they're worthy of anything better. They don't feel like they can get anything better. And so that is a really powerful tool that people will use. Nobody's going to want you. You've got 3 kids. Nobody's going to want you. You're too fat. You're too stupid. You're too ugly. All of that type of language. If you hear that enough, what happens? You begin to believe those things about yourself. And so why is this such a powerful tool? Because again, the question often comes is, why don't they leave? Well, if you have been listening to someone tell you how nobody's going to want you, nobody's going to believe you, you're going to be broke, alone, all of these types of things so much, you begin to think that this is the best you can get or can have. And so you can stay in a place that you were not created. Making someone feel crazy by gaslighting them. I didn't even hit you. That was so, I mean, like all kinds of things. The gaslighting starts to make you wonder, am I losing it? Did I experience this the way I think I experienced this? Those things are powerful mental tools that abusers will use to keep people under their control. Undermining confidence and identity starts to create dependence. That's important. Okay. Remember that undermining their confidence and their identity starts to create dependence. That is why it is very important that as you are raising your children, and I don't just say girls, I say children, girls and boys, that we try to make sure that we are instilling in them a strong sense of identity, a strong sense of belonging and love, and that it's always okay, even if you mess up, that you can tell someone. All of those things are important things to instill. Now, I want to say this. It doesn't mean if someone is in an abusive relationship that their parents did not do that. That is not what that means. I'm just saying these are things that we want to do as we are raising our children. Okay, so they'll try to use the emotional abuse. They'll try to use the intimidation. Another tactic that people often use is isolation. Isolation. If you, before I go on, if you know of someone or if you have been in a domestic violence situation, if you know of someone or if you have been a victim yourself or if you are a survivor, will you put a 1 in the comments? If you know of someone or you've been that person, put a 1 in the comments. Why are we doing that? Because I want people to know that most of us know somebody that has been in an abusive relationship. Last year during October, I had a dear friend of mine come on and share her story. And, as she's telling the story, we were talking because we've been friends since we were like 18. And she was sharing how she tried to make sure no one knew what was happening. Right. And so going into this next section, isolation, that isolation is really, really a powerful tool that abusers will use. Why? Because you start to control who people can talk to, who people can see. It shapes what perspective they receive. It's going to shape their dependence on you. So if they feel like they don't have anybody to go to, of course, it's easier for that abuser to continue to abuse because this person is feeling like they are dependent on the person that is abusing them. Even if it may not always be financial dependence, but it could be emotional dependence. Nobody wants you like me. Nobody's going to take care of you or do this, right? All of those things. Limiting access to work, to family, or outside support is a very strong tool that abusers will use to manipulate their partners to be dependent on them so that they don't feel that they have a way out. If you remember what is it, Tina Turner story, What's Love Got to Do with It? You'll remember in the scene where her mother actually betrayed her, right? Her mother actually betrayed her. Well, the point of isolation is to get if you say, I'm going to leave, and the abuser has gotten to your parents or gotten to your mom, which is the person that you may reach out to, and the abuser has limited almost everybody else that you have communication with, then it starts to feel very, very hopeless and hopeless. And again, that's what happens. It starts to tear away at your confidence that you can get out and have a successful life apart from this person. So it's really important that you start to notice isolation. Now, if you're dating, and we talked about this last week with Tori, if you're dating someone, it is probably pretty common for you to spend less time with everybody else and starts to spend more time with the person that you're dating. That is not necessarily a red flag. What I would say is to start paying attention when they start telling you they don't want you around other people. I don't like this person. They're constantly cutting you off from everyone. Again, that doesn't mean that your partner has to like everybody that you like, but again, your partner should not be limiting and cutting you off from everybody. Why? Because that is going to shape, that could be a red flag, and just something to pay attention to. Number 4 on this power and control wheel, if you guys will share this video, share it, like it, do all of those things so we can get some more viewers. Tag someone that you know could benefit from this, someone who may have one of their loved ones in an abusive relationship, someone who may be in an abusive relationship or just got out of an abusive relationship. Why do I say someone who may have just gotten out? Because sometimes that period is very stressful for them because they feel guilty for staying, and they need to know that a lot of these tactics were very, very intentional, and there's no shame and any of that, right? So again, let's look at minimizing, denying, and blaming. That's number 4. That's the 4th thing that a lot of abusers use in the power and control wheel to keep that or maintain that control. How do you do that? Minimizing, blaming. Minimizing, I barely hit you. Oh, you're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. Or even blaming, if you wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have hit you. If you wouldn't have said this, or if you would have had the dinner ready, if you wouldn't have wore that dress, if you wouldn't have embarrassed me in front of my friends, I would have done these things, right? And so they blame that other person, and that person starts to begins to think, if I would just change, it would stop, right? They start to internalize the blame and really say, the reason that I got hit was because of my behavior. And so making light of the abuse, shifting responsibility. They may also use sentences like, you're too sensitive. What is that? That starts making it a personal issue. Yeah, maybe I am being a little too sensitive. Maybe I should just deal with it. Everybody, gets talked to in a harsh way. I got to learn how to toughen up. Okay. You made me do that. All of those types of things. This keeps the victim questioning their own reality. Am I to blame for this? Is this my fault? Should I change? Am I the real problem in this relationship? Right. Again, what is that doing? Everything that I'm naming is undermining your what do you call it? Your ability to believe that you can get out and be successful on your own or apart from the abuser. Okay. Number 5, which I think is really, really sad and scary, using children. So oftentimes people will stay when they're children. And again, oftentimes this is very intentional. The abuser will use the children as leverage, threatening to take the children away, threatening you'll never see your kids again. I won't provide for the kids. How could you destroy our family? Or even they may even use it in a more subtle way. You would destroy our kids by breaking up their family, making that victim believe or hear, oh wait, I'm being a bad person by denying my kid the other parent. I would be a bad person if I took my children away from this person who also loves them, right? All of this is manipulation. All of this is intentional to keep that person under their control. They also may use visitation to harass or control, right? So if they're coming over, I'm coming to see my kids. You can't stop me from seeing my kids. And so they use the children as pawns to get what they want. If you're seeing those types of things, these are signs, hey, this person is trying to maintain control. They may even think that they can still, there is a separation, they may even believe that they can still control what's happening in the house because their children are in the house. Again, all of these are signs to maintain that control. This creates fear and oftentimes guilt in the person who's being abused because they don't want to again, harm their children in any way or put their children in any sense of danger. So particularly women who are really strong-minded in the sense of, I want to provide and protect my kids, they may stay to make sure that that abuse only goes to them and it doesn't transfer to their children, right? They could also go, I would rather him do that to me than my children. There was a statistic, I don't know if I read it earlier. What was it? Let's see. Yeah, it says approximately 15.5 million children in the US witness domestic violence. That's insane. 15 million children in the US each year. I left out that part. Each year witness domestic violence. So sometimes women will say, I'd rather stay in because I don't want this person around my children without me. I'm staying so that I can protect them from what could be physical abuse. So there's so many things that keep people feeling stuck. And so I want, if you are in that situation or if you've been in that situation, I want you to begin to forgive yourself because there were a lot of factors there that was playing to keep you in that unhealthy space. Is this helping anybody? Do you guys have any questions or comments as we're going through this? I don't mind answering any questions or comments as we're talking about this. Okay. Number 6 is using male privilege. Using male privilege. What does that mean? Treating your partner like a servant or property. That's just what it means. You have to do what I say because I'm the husband. And oftentimes, you guys know I'm a believer, strong believer, but oftentimes people will use religion as a way to maintain that quote unquote male privilege or that dominance in that way. And they'll say, the Bible says I'm the head. The Bible says you should submit to me. Well, the Bible says that the husbands and wives should submit one to another. They usually conveniently forget that part, but they will use religion oftentimes, not all the time, but sometimes if they are, especially if the woman is religious, they will use religion to say, I'm the head, you do what I say. And again, this is just furthering their ability to try to maintain this power that they know could slip away from them. And so they're going to use every angle. And that male privilege is one of them. Making major decisions without their partner is one of the things that they may do. Defining gender roles really rigidly. You're a woman, you're supposed to do this. The women do this, the men do this. Women have to cook, men have to do this. You cannot do this because you're a woman and I'm the man. These types of rigid roles can lend to, if you are dating someone who is very traditional and they have strict gender roles, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are abusive. But again, this can lend to someone believing because they are a male, they have this dominant stance in a relationship, which can open the door for abuse. Now, this next one is one that I don't think enough people talk about. The next part of that power and control wheel is using economic abuse. Oh yeah, this is a thing that happens a lot. Why? So it sounds really good to say my husband pays this or I don't have a job. And I'm not, trust me, I am all about if someone's going to pay, if they don't want you to work and you don't want to work and it works best for your family, that's wonderful. However, there is something to be said when I don't have any control over any finances, or I don't have any say so, or I don't know what's going on at all with the finances, because that, again, it lends to dependency in the sense of now, if I ever do need to leave, I can't because I don't have any income, or it makes it difficult because I don't have any income coming in. So what does this financial abuse look like? Not allowing the person to work, only giving them an allowance, making them ask for money in, like, again, more of an allowance type of situation. And I'm not talking, this works in healthy, non-abusive relationships. There are people who one doesn't work and the other one takes care of them financially. That is not, again, necessarily alone a red flag. But if you start to see that coupled with these other things that we've talked about, then you got some red flags there. Sometimes even preventing access to education, preventing access to other people that could give them different perspectives. We talked about that with the isolation. All of that is a part of economic abuse. Why? Because if you're limited in your education, you're going to be limited in the things that you can do. If you're limited in the things that you can do to earn money, you are going to be dependent on me, right? And so if you don't want to, they don't want you as the victim to get money. They don't want you to have that freedom to be able to go and do different things that make you happy, or that gives you a sense of independence. So economic control keeps people trapped. Financial dependence and emotional defeat they go together, right? So if you're financially dependent and you're emotionally defeated, it's very difficult to leave that situation. So if you have a job, even if you have a job, but you don't have a job that allows you to be able to pay for a lot of the things that you would need independently, again, you have to go, wait a minute. I am in this place. A lot of these things alone are not necessarily red flags. Obviously, intimidation, physical abuse, those are red, those are big. But I'm saying someone taking care of their spouse 100% financially is not necessarily a red flag unless there is that controlling or manipulative kind of stuff. The next part of that is coercion and threats. So that it's really direct, right? So that first part is intimidation, slightly less direct, but the coercion and threats may be more direct. If you leave me, I will kill you. Or if you leave me, I'll take the kids. If you leave me, I will ruin your reputation. These are threats. These are things that will keep people stuck, pressuring them into illegal acts or silence, right? If you don't do this, or making them do something illegal, which then gives them another thing to hold over their head because you did this bad thing. And now if you leave, I can expose you. All of these things are very, very manipulative, and they can be very tricky for people who are stuck or feel stuck. And I want to say feel stuck because there are ways for you to get out. And I want you to know that if you're watching this, if you catch the replay, you're not stuck. There are opportunities for you to get out. But again, that, as we talked last week, that can also be a very dangerous time. So creating a plan is important. Beginning to build your support system, beginning to get your finances in order, finding a shelter that's open and available, and all of those things, getting like an escape plan, not just kind of a whim. Whims can happen and they can work, but having a plan can also make it be a little bit smoother with that transition. Okay. So using coercion and threats, pressuring them into legal activities, creating ongoing fear and compliance. Okay. So in contrast with this power and control wheel, there's another wheel called the equality wheel. And what that is it talks about the same kind of amount of things, but they're different. What are you going to see in a healthy relationship? You're going to see trust and support. You're going to see negotiation and fairness. So we both get to talk about what we want, what we don't want, what we need, what we don't need, all of those things. You're going to see shared responsibility, non-threatening behavior, respect, and accountability. If there is a mistake, hey, I'm taking my ownership of what I just did, and I can do that, right? These are the things you want to see in a relationship: trust and support, negotiation and fairness, shared responsibilities, non-threatening behaviors, respect, and accountability. If they're lacking in these areas, you want to be mindful of that. Okay. Healthy relationships are about mutual power, mutual respect, not control. Okay. I'm going to say that again. Healthy relationships are about mutual power, mutual respect, not control. Love does not require dominance. Put that in the comments. Love does not require dominance. It does require, or healthy relationships do require, safety, choice, and dignity. Choice is important right here because people don't think about it. You want to be with someone who wants to be with you. You want to be with someone who values you and who is safe for you physically, emotionally, financially, all of those things. Someone who you know you could you if you are making good choices, they're supportive of you. If you want to go and further your education and grow, they are supportive of that. That is so valuable. And dignity, again, just treating you with respect as a human being. Okay. So when you think about this and you're looking at kind of the power and control stuff, you have to be looking at, what does my relationship look like? Is it more like that second wheel, the equality wheel, or the power and control? The people that I'm encountering that may be in abusive relationships, are you seeing how it's not as easy for them to just leave? Now, couple that with, if you have already come from a background where you've witnessed domestic violence, so then it's even more normalized in your life. Or if you come from an environment where they believe your people around you have taught about male dominance and that women should just do what men say, it makes it really easy for you to say, oh, it's easy for me to fall into that space, right? So what signs might have you overlooked in your own relationships or those of other people? And when we go back and see or hear about someone who got out of abusive relationship, sometimes we go, I did notice they were isolating, but I didn't think anything of it. Or I did notice they became different, they start being more quiet, or like Tori talked last week about dramatic changes in their dress or the way they do things. Maybe they were dressing very conservatively and they started dressing more risque, or maybe they were dressing one more risque and they started dressing more conservatively, right? Those could be signs of like, that was a kind of big shift. What's happening here? That doesn't mean, now listen, we all love a good upgrade story. What's the upgrade story where, oh man, he was dressing like this and she came along and gave him a little more swag and help his style? We're not talking about upgrading in that way, right? We're talking about the person that came into the relationship is changing so much because someone else is pressuring them to be and do something else. You want someone who appreciates you for who you are, not that they don't encourage your growth or that they don't encourage you to evolve, but if they're trying to create you to be somebody you are not, that is not a healthy sign. So perfect love, now think about this for add some scriptural context. Perfect love casts out fear, according to 1 John 4:18. If you are with someone and they are bringing fear, you have to ask yourself, is that love? Okay, I'm going to say that again. Perfect love casts out fear, according to 1 John 4:18. If you're with someone and they are not bringing a sense of safety, but they are bringing a sense of fear, intimidation, all of those types of feelings, is that love or is that control and manipulation? Abuse is not just about anger. It's about power. It's about control. Because if it was just about anger, you would only see abuse when that person's angry. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of times, if you ever talk to someone who's been in an abusive relationship, that abuse was happening when the person may have been laughing. They may have been being emotionally abusive and laughing. They may have been being emotionally abusive and being totally calm. It is not always this fit of anger that leads to emotional abuse. It's about power. It's about control. Okay. The power and control wheel helps us to identify patterns early on, and healing begins with awareness, boundaries, and support. I want to let anyone out there who may be experiencing this or know of someone who is, support is huge. It's important that we don't just minimize our support in these situations. And we talked last week, we don't ever want anyone to put themselves in any kind of danger, right? And I think that's what a lot of people get a little nervous because they say, well, she went back or he went back to that person. or I didn't want to get involved because now I'm in the middle of some drama and I don't want to bring that drama to my house. So you also have to maintain your own boundaries, but letting people know that you are there for them can mean more than you realize. Okay. So today's topic, because I just wanted to kind of pick up from last week, I thought Tori did an excellent job. If you watched last week's interview, talking about not only the shelters losing their funding, but also this whole concept of domestic abuse and awareness and bringing all that to be a part of it. So again, if you did miss that interview, go to YouTube at Tenitria and look that up. That's all I have. I want to ask you guys, do you have any comments or questions? I do have some announcements that I want to go over. But I want to give people time if there are any comments or questions. I am doing some spring, I guess, having a spring sale, getting some books that I've written, getting those out of the inventories because we're doing some new things and I want to get these things out so that we are making room for new things that we are working on. So I don't see any questions or comments. Thank you guys for joining. Don't leave. I want to share some things with you. I have this book. I wrote this book a couple years ago. It's called, I don't know if you can see it here. There we go. Who Told You That? It is a book that really just kind of, I don't know, God kind of downloaded these things, and it is a working book, right? So it's books, but it's a regular book to read, but it's also have like a workbook component. So it has questions for you to answer. The premise of the book really is about identifying the lies that came from the enemy that you have allowed to keep you, I guess you want to say, in bondage, to keep you stuck, to keep you whatever, right? And from achieving the goals that you have. So the entire title of the book is Who Told You That? Moving from limitation to celebration. And so what we do is we identify the limiting beliefs, the lies that we may have believed about ourselves. And then we replace that with the word of God and walk through a very systematic way of saying, okay, now what's my goal? How do I get clear on what my goals are? What are the things that could stop me? How do I overcome those goals? So this is an amazing tool to use. And I think it's like $20 something. But again, I'm selling these now. If you will, you can actually just Cash App at $sign Tenitria Williams. As you see, this is when my hair was very, very short. I kind of miss my short hair. So you can Cash App $15. Same thing. I've got a book that I wrote with my baby girl, Brielle, Celebrating You Too, which is a journal. This is the children's version. I don't see any of the adult versions. I may have a couple of those, but I don't see them. So Celebrating You is a 45-day affirmation journal, which was really, really fun to write. So these affirmations, it gives you a daily affirmation, and then it asks the question, what does God say about this affirmation? And it gives these instructions, and they're for children to read every morning before school. They can write or draw a picture of what they feel like God is saying to them about that affirmation. So if you have children in your life that could benefit from this one, it's called Celebrating You Too. And so again, this is me and Brielle were the contributors to this book. She helped me with that. She was very proud. I was very proud of her as well. So if you are interested in any of those things, I will actually put it in the comment section. And I would just need your email address, or not email address, your address, so I can mail these to you. Each of these is $15. We're just trying to sell these things because I believe that they are very helpful. I don't have many, but I do have a few. And so I said, hey, as we're making room for the new projects that we are working on, I should make sure that I let people know that these are available to them to get at a discount rate. I'll send those out this week so you can have your journal or your Who Told You That book. If you want that, again, send me an inbox, Cash App, or whatever you need to do to get those products. Of course, I tell you guys this all the time, but if you are someone who someone who needs services, they can give me a call. My number is 470-410-9790. So if you a friend needs any counseling or coaching, let me know. That is important. And they can also shoot me an email. It's my first name at gmail.com. I'm always here to provide more insight, more understanding about mental health and practical steps that we can use to better ourselves. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you. I appreciate your willingness to tune in. All the things that I believe God is telling me to do a lot of things right now. And so I'm just trying to get in alignment to make sure that I am doing what he's telling me to do, doing the things that are effective and efficient for my life, for the kingdom, and for my family. And so if you're ready to do that and you say, I need some coaching, some counseling, or any of those things, again, reach out to me. It's very easy to schedule appointments so we can get rolling. Thank you again. And I appreciate you guys. And I will see you back here next Thursday at 12 p.m. for another episode of Minding My Mental Health. Bye-bye.
Misconceptions, fallacies, enigmas, building up the people, tearing down stigmas, clothed with a purpose. When life tries to wear on me, pray and read the word, but I still go to therapy. No matter your past or what you've been through, this is a space, not judgmental. We got some things to get into. I got my minding on my meds. No matter your past or what you've been through, this is a space, not judgmental. We got some things to get into. I got my minding on my mental. Minding my mental. Minding my mental. Minding my mental health. Minding my mental. Minding my mental. Minding my mental.